Alright, everyone. I've been seeing a lot of questions online about Finite and what it is, and I figured with my tutoring experience I might as well answer some of your questions. So, welcome to my quick talk about Finite. Quick disclaimer, Roosh Tutoring assumes no liability for any omissions or errors in this presentation. The information presented is the opinion of me, based on my years of experience tutoring, and is not an official statement from any university or academic institution. Any discussion of syllabus, course requirements, or other related academic issue is merely the presenter's interpretation of publications. Again, please consult, IU for official, information about course requirements and everything. So to begin, welcome to IU. Your students worked really hard to get here, and we are so glad to have you. And, as an IU grad myself, I loved it. A little about me. Grew up in Kokomo, Indiana. I'm a 2015 graduate of IU. I majored in chemistry and physics, and I've been tutoring Finite and Calc for over 10 years. I'm a former undergrad TA for Finite and Calc. I've tutored hundreds of students. In my spare time, I like making mead, hiking, and gardening. And I have 3 kids, a wife, and a schnauzer. So, what is finite math? Well, really that depends on who you ask. Every college is going to have a different take on it. It's not like calculus where it's pretty, standard. Finite is a collection of all kinds of things. Right here, I kind of put the 2 things in the bulletin from IU and Ivy Tech. So you have sets, counting. There is a lot of overlap between the two, but then there's a lot of things they do differently as well. In my experience tutoring both of them, so really, again, it comes down to how the class defines it, kind of what's in the syllabus. Also, IE to note, there is V118 and then D116 and 117. V118 is more of a social sciences based finite, so less business schooly. And then D116 and 117, that's the finite over the course of a year rather than a semester. So how does finite compare to calculus? A lot of people ask that. Many of you may have had calculus in high school. So really, finite is less standardized. And again, it says, as I said earlier, it varies campus to campus. Whereas I could probably, with my years of tutoring, walk into the University of Wisconsin and take a calculus exam and do fairly well. I don't know Wisconsin's requirements on finite. I could walk in there and they could have totally different notation and maybe some similar questions, but I wouldn't perform nearly as well. Topics are also not as dependent on each other, so I kind of compare it to a bag of tricks. The notation and small details can vary a lot. Even between Ivy Tech and IU, there's a lot of different ways they do things. And there's a lot of interpreting of word problems. So there's talks about, face cards and, picking things up in card games, for example. You could be flipping coins and, heads or tails, and then defining different things to find the probability. So really, you have to read the problems very closely and understand kind of what's being asked. So a little talk about the courses themselves. IU M118. It is required for Kelley School of Business graduation. I believe it's this summer they've actually changed it to where it's no longer required for admission, although they do want you to have a plan on when you're going to take it. It's in a large lecture format, so typically when you take it on campus, you're going to be in a large lecture hall. However, the homework is all online and pretty standardized. And again, a lot of finite, while you may have a different lecturer, much of the course homework is departmentally prepared. The midterm and finals are both departmental, and in the past they've been on paper. I don't think they've done an online option yet. But, in reality, while you may have a different professor, 51% of the course is going to be departmentally graded. And that's going to be your midterm and your finals. So those are the big things that you're really going to have to prepare for, do well at, which your homework can help. So, no calculators are allowed in finite at IU. That's a big difference from what you may be used to in a lot of your past math classes. And many find it time-consuming. Again, you're learning a lot of different things, a lot of different concepts. It's while you may have a good algebra background or may have a good calculus background, finite's very different from both of those. But the good thing is that there are a ton of on-campus resources, which we'll discuss later. Ivy Tech M135 is their version of the Finite course. The course will transfer to IU as a credit. In every Indiana college, there's like transfer agreements between them. However, to be sure to understand that even though the credit may transfer, it may not satisfy some program requirements, mainly the Kelly School business. Again, check with your advisor on that. The course is mostly taught online. There's this thing called like Learn Anywhere, where it's basically an online class, although you can go in person if you want. Calculators are allowed and encouraged in Ivy Tech M135, so that's a big difference between that and the IU course. Then there's also 8-week and full semester formats available. Some students prefer to just do the 8 weeks and get it over with, especially in spring with Little 5 towards the end of the semester. Some students like to do it in summer. So, again, those are all options that you can consider. And then I believe there is some tutoring available at Ivy Tech's campus, but again, that's something you need to check with Ivy Tech. So now, to succeed in Finite, or really any math course, really comes down to time. You have to invest the time to get the grade. Obviously, doing the homework and web work, even though the web work, at least in M118, is a small portion of your grade, it will really prepare you to do well on the exam. And then, of course, when you're preparing for your exams, they usually provide a ton of practice exams. And in my years of tutoring Finite, the exams that end up usually coming from a similar bank of questions over the years. So really, if you study the past exams, there's a good chance that a lot of those questions will be very similar. One rule of thumb I see is that starting out, just plan on studying at least 5 hours per week. And that's 1 hour per weekday. That doesn't mean you have to study every day. But maybe some days you study 2 hours, maybe some days you study 3, and maybe you can take off a Wednesday if you want to go bowl with your friends or something. But in reality, plan on investing that 5 hours per week on week 1 and keep up with the material. You may have to do more. Maybe you have to do 8 hours a week. It just depends on how well you comprehend the material. Also, seek out help early. Again, tons of on-campus resources. There's office hours and tutoring, and consider other lectures. Again, in my experience as a TA, one of my professors I TA'd for was very good, and a lot of students would end up showing up to his lectures and watch him teach because they thought he did a good job of teaching. So that's just something to consider if you find that maybe you don't have the best lecturer. For on-campus resources, I cannot recommend enough the Academic Support Center. When I was a freshman, I went there all the time. I lived in Teeter, and it was a great experience. The tutors there are great. I used to tutor there for many years. There's also online options. There's also the Math Learning Center on Swain East on the 3rd floor. That's run by the math department, whereas the ASC is opened in the evenings. The MLC is more of a late morning to early to mid-afternoon. So depending on when you're available, that could be a good place to drop in and get tutoring. And then also your professors may offer office hours. And then you'll probably see it in from your professor, but the Finite Show is a series of videos about various finite topics that was developed kind of back in the 90s and when your parents were in school. So it is kind of funny to watch and to see some of the demonstrations. But if you are looking for private tutoring, feel free, don't hesitate, call, text me, Andrew, 765-319-8657. I have one-on-one and group tutoring available. And again, if you are looking to succeed, feel free to drop me a line. Thank you for your time, and good luck as you start at IU.